Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. Today I'm going to have part 2 of a show that I had last year. I call it an oldie but a goodie, and it's about the Inquisition, and it's relevant because today I think it's really, really important when I have callers like Webster Tarpley talk about how for 700 or for however many years we've been able to hold on to Habeas Corpus. It's so precious. You know, he said we went through World War I, World War II, and to really understand it, this oldie but goodie that I played on November 16th was etchings of the Inquisition and the nature of the tortures. So what I'm going to do is continue on with that, and the callers that I got afterwards was provocative. But it's a living, right? Now, before this was shown, the people that were showing it said that the Inquisition was an entire industry. It went on for several hundred years.
Right,
and he
right.
said,
That's the only way it could have went on.
okay,
right?
he said that for that to have just sort of stopped because people were going to kind of wake up and smell the coffee would be like us to stop computers. Imagine all of the different peripherals in the industry of computers. So it's a bit of a complex thing.
Wow.
So yeah, now my point of showing this is I'm very enthusiastic to move way on and to see the great opportunities that we have by understanding our full potential and by calling forth a deeper knowledge because we're ready for that knowledge.
Right.
Part of the readiness has to do with the fact that when we judge and we blame, and we say, oh, this is the Catholic Church, I'm not a Catholic, I'm Jewish, they were persecuting me,
Yeah,
I'm off
and the church
I'm off
hasn't
the
said
hook.
anything about the torture.
Yeah, but let me say here, I'm cutting off this caller a little bit. I regret that now that I look back on it. But at the time, it was a little scary because I had just shown 20 minutes worth of etchings from the Inquisition, the different methods of torture, and I was a little bit on edge of what kind of calls I was going to get. So I want to say right here to all my viewers, I do apologize for my limitations. I do the best I can. It was a wonderful caller, and he was giving me something, but I didn't want to risk the energy dropping into victimization. I'll tell you, what Eric Beret said was a bit soft compared to that. Eric Beret was an Advaita yoga teacher that I'd had on the day before, and he's from France. Anger that we go through internally when we're cut off in traffic or someone takes our parking place. Now, I know because we're not used to becoming familiar with our delicate thinking process, we think it's not related what's happening on the inside. But the point of the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know, is that there is no out there. All this is inside. So I think I'd like to pause now, caller, and let me roll in something else with one of the stars from What the Bleep Do We Know. Okay, what the caller had talked about, he said, does this have anything to do with what's going on with the tortures in Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay? And you know, definitely, that's why I was playing it. And see how you take it in, and then let's continue on, okay?
Thanks.
Okay, thanks for calling.
No problem.
So here we're going to go with another one. People to worship.
Trap even for the ones who are able to do the miracles. This is
Now, last week we had Miceal Ledwith here in New York, and it was very interesting. He was talking about how Jesus became a Christ. And so this is an old interview that I had done with him right after some extraordinary things had started to happen in his life. And I'm hoping to figure out a way, maybe by booking regular time here at the studio, announcing it through the email so people can call in, even though I don't have a live time slot anymore. Let's see if we can get Miceal to be calling us in the future and responding to the exact questions that you have.
at the end of the world.
Yeah.
They should advance to even more wonderful things, but
Yeah.
they get trapped in the phenomena that they're able to accomplish.
Yeah.
And some of them don't even know how they're able to do it.
Right.
But
The miraculous and the horrific can go hand in hand. It's not to say one is, well, it's a complex topic, but...
the main thing is to realize that there are much more dimensions out there. And as you said, the The point is not to bring the God that's out there inside us. That's like these alien movies where something is in here and bursting out. I know a lot of people feel uncomfortable with the God within. It's not something in.
What he's saying here is that when we say we are God and we are responsible for our creation, you know, there's many schools of thoughts and religions that say this is the biggest blasphemy you can say. On the other hand, when you're hanging out with those groups that say, you know, we're all God, then when you get cancer, some bummer comes along and you hear that you're responsible for it, you don't really understand how you're responsible for it, so you're not really equipped. So it's a very deep topic to know when we need to recognize higher abilities and authorities and blessings than ourselves, and when to recognize that it all originates within our consciousness. And so that's what Miceal is going into at this point, that difference. And as regards the miracles that he's talking about, and when I say it's a complex topic, I'm introducing this to say that we shouldn't feel overwhelmed when we see these horrific accounts of the tortures of millions and millions of people and the human sacrifice that's gone on in the past and continues to go on. But we should feel that we can line up with enormously powerful, beneficial, and benevolent energies.
Inside my body.
Because then you'd be the one asking for the sacrifice of a son or some of this weirdness that went on in the Old Testament.
It's entirely penetrated through me. It's what I am. I just use a body in this life to interact with the material realm, but basically none of us in this world are material beings. We are much more than that.
Do you think that we had to evolve through certain steps of self-worth, and that's why for a little while we allowed, because as great gods descending 7 levels in reality, we allowed a Jehovah to be in our reality?
Yes, and that's only a very recent thing.
Yeah. Compared to
in the context of history. But we have been very badly served by our history, our cultures, our sciences even, and our religions, needless to say, about where we came from and what we should do and where we're going. And the price is now being paid by the religions themselves.
We've been badly served for probably so many years, but then Jesus 2,000 years ago came along and said God is benevolent and loving.
Yes.
And there's nothing that you can ask for.
Right. And he spoke about the quantum world.
The quantum world.
He talked about the mustard seed, the most tiny thing of all, is the most powerful.
Can you elaborate on that? I know the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, that what you affect the experiment.
In physics, we know that reality is basically energy, as Albert Einstein said and has since been proven, and that the energy collapses into a particle when the mind observes it. So everything around us, believe it or not, is what we have drawn there.
It's energy that we're focusing in certain ways.
In certain ways. And that's true from the people all around us, you know.
Yeah, miracle makers are regular people on the streets begging.
Or even, you know, the dust on our floors and the people that come in and annoy us at our jobs, we've drawn them all there.
Right.
And the basic step to evolution is when we realize that we are the ones solely responsible for what we are and what we experience. That's the utter depths of the dark night of the soul that day. You realize that there's no one to point the finger at except here. But once you do that and accept the responsibility, then you begin to soar.
Do you think that realization that happens that day can come from a deep soul level that's even beyond the personality?
Oh, certainly.
And what I'm thinking is, what about the horrific case of those under the influence of mind control, of which programming often goes by an authoritative figure saying, I am the voice of God, and I'm commanding you to do this or that. It's sort of a hypnotic state that's achieved over weeks and years of sophisticated programming. If there's a concept of God within, can you explain how this could never happen to a person that has such a realization?
Well, unfortunately, those horrific cases that you have mentioned are a fact. They have occurred. People have been mind controlled to this degree. Now, unfortunately, we've all been mind controlled, maybe in a less insidious way, because the same message has been pumped at us through our history, our cultures, our religions, and we accept that we are helpless creatures here who must ask for God's mercy and help. And while we're in that position of being victims, we remain victims because what are we focusing on the energy? Victimhood.
Right.
Lack of worth, wretched sinners. So we create more and more of the wretched sinners and the victimization. Right. Now, if we could reprogram our minds, we would have a different mind control, which would lead us to the sublime beyond where we are.
Yes, but we would be in charge then. The sublime would be our God within coming forth.
Yes.
And if it was just our limited ego, it wouldn't be strong enough to break out of the programming if that was the case of somebody rehabilitating from that point. But from the point of the rest of society, where most of us watch the kind of television that gives us a very mediocre sense of reality, we can't even believe that such things exist, that a person could be completely mind-controlled. Say, for the example of a lady like Kathy O'Brien, who had terrible experiences since childhood, was a sex slave. She must have been some point when her God self came forth and then attracted to her a deprogrammer, and then eventually enough support so that 14 million copies of her book and story could be circulated, with all of the documentation showing that people that we watch on television, and we sort of have a sense that what they're saying, you know, isn't really so, but we can't believe how much it's not really so in terms of the voting and the society we're creating. Meanwhile,
what I was trying to get at here was, if we think that these stories are so fantastic and so impossible about the abuses going on, just look at the voting record. Just look at what the taxpayers are paying and what they're funding, and the young boys that have to go off to war.
If we do what you say, which is not throw the baby out with the bathwater, don't throw...
When I'm saying don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, this is something Miceal had said. You don't need to reinvent more religions, and being that he was a Catholic priest, you know, he was talking about the goodness inside that religion. And of course, yesterday we just saw the etchings of the Inquisition, but I also said in order to move on, we have to move on with wanting to punish and blame and lay guilt, because we're just going to perpetuate the horror. And for sure, this was not everybody in the Catholic Church that was involved with the Inquisition, or the most active and horrific parts of the Inquisition.
Their hands and say, you know, let's give up on religion. But
what I was trying to get at here was, if we think that these stories are so fantastic and so impossible about the abuses going on, just look at the voting record. Just look at what the taxpayers are paying and what they're funding, and the young boys that have to go off to war.
If we do what you say, which is not throw the baby out with the bathwater, don't throw...
When I'm saying don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, this is something Miceal had said. You don't need to reinvent more religions, and being that he was a Catholic priest, you know, he was talking about the goodness inside that religion. And of course, yesterday we just saw the etchings of the Inquisition, but I also said in order to move on, we have to move on with wanting to punish and blame and lay guilt, because we're just going to perpetuate the horror. And for sure, this was not everybody in the Catholic Church that was involved with the Inquisition, or the most active and horrific parts of the Inquisition.
Their hands and say, you know, let's give up on religion, but go in and let's get back to what Jesus said in the case of Christianity, and see if we can't turn all this around.
Yes, well, that would be wonderful, and that would be the way it should be.
Yeah, I mean, it would be...
Look at him. He thinks I'm a little naive, right?
So
I'm doubtful it will happen, but let's hope.
It's funny, because one of your co-teachers was saying he was thinking the time was coming that some of these details of this horrific mind control programming was NBC and ABC were interested in it.
See, I retaliated there. Greg Simmons, I think some of you have seen him in the past. He's one of the teachers at the Ramtha School. He was talking, I should look up, I think this was in 1999. He was saying ABC News was interested in getting the story out. But remember, good journalists have to go through editors.
It seems just like
And that's not true here in public access.
want to jump on
Well,
it.
there is, it certainly, it's like, as they used to say in Greek in the ancient, the kairos, the point when the explosion occurs or when the barriers all come down. We have reached that stage in the world today. There's a big sea shift happening in the world today, and people are open in a way they never were before. Unfortunately, most of our modern society, you know, is fulfilling a role in keeping us in prison, because our biggest problem today is not so much, say, bad thinking or erroneous thinking and all that. Our problem really in trying to get beyond the surface is that we cannot stop thinking. And there's this endless movie show running up here that keeps me in the physical realm. Now, to get beyond that, I have to stop the mind. I have to stop the movement. I have to stop the sensations of the body and focus.
Have you been able to do that?
Yes, but not to the degree that I eventually hope to. But
Right,
yes, I
but
have.
you've been given a vision.
Yes.
It's not philosophy, it's been your experience.
It has to be experienced, otherwise,
Yeah.
you know, there's no way to prove this except to say, well, listen, try it yourself and see what you find, and you will find the vindication or something.
What you're describing definitely seems like an experience that someone would have who's in an esoteric ancient school of wisdom only for a few select high initiates. And yet, I also sense that you have a feeling that 1 billion people in the Catholic Church might be ready for a reinterpretation of Jesus' message.
I'm sure they all would. When it comes to the crunch of taking personal responsibility for your life, which is step number 1, I'm sure a lot of people are afraid to take responsibility. They want to be taken care of.
Yeah.
They want to know that there's somebody up there who knows everything, controls everything. And there is. But the point is that we also down here are meant to be on a journey for that Creator.
But don't you think we also need a lift now and then? I mean, didn't Jesus come and give us this example?
He did, a very powerful example.
And can't we now and then be that to each other? Like, you've
Yes.
spent many years in this school, and now
It's a very
you're
powerful example,
circulating.
but unfortunately, you know, the subtle message has been that we are meant just to adore Him. We are
Yeah,
not meant to imitate Him only to a certain degree. The
right.
rest is off limits.
Now, you were saying that was because of Paul's interpretation. There were only so many things that were acceptable for us
Well,
to
you
do,
can-
like
you-
be...
Here we are back on Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. Are you hearing me? And we're going to take live call-ins on that. That was some pretty provocative information, I think. The reason that I juxtaposed these two was oftentimes people think when sort of New Agey types say, well, let's create new realities, that they're kind of oblivious and they're sort of living in a fairy tale world. Okay, I have a caller. Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Caller, can you hear me? Oh, it looks like the call dropped. So sorry. Anyway, notwithstanding technical difficulties here, I'm very much hoping to get some feedback from the Manhattan audience. And let me try again. Here's somebody. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Great. What do you think about this material?
It's pretty good, but you know, I've pretty much, I'm not going to say I've extensively studied religion, but I know that there's a different story about Jesus Christ, and there's a different book, and not a different book that he's written, but there's a different story about Jesus Christ in a different religious book, and that's the Quran. And in the Quran, it tells a different story about Jesus Christ than in the Bible.
Caller, I understand that, and I know, I think at this point, a lot of people are pretty hip to, like, the Da Vinci Code. You mean like that?
No. I'm talking about the Quran and how
Are
the
you
Muslims
Muslim?
view the message from Jesus Christ.
Are you Muslim?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, were you born Muslim?
No, I was not.
Okay, because I read the whole Quran when I was in a Tibetan refugee camp in New
Okay.
Delhi.
Okay, sure.
And so I agree, when you look at it, it was very interesting.
Yeah, it's a different story, but I mean, it's not totally different. But
Right.
It's a different story, though.
But I think the bottom line, like what Eric Beret was saying,
Right.
after he finally saw this material, he said, how often do people reflect on the violence that goes on when someone cuts them off in traffic or someone takes your parking place. It's by studying these mechanics deeply, particularly in our communication skills, that we might have the ability to unravel it. So Krishnamurti said, as far as authoritative books were concerned,
Krishnamurti?
Yeah, you know
okay.
Krishnamurti? Do you know Krishnamurti?
Yeah, I've heard of him, and I watched a lot of his program when it comes to MNN.
That's another wonderful thing that MNN does, you know. Anyway, he said, read your own book. And I think the message of read your own book means what Father Miceal was saying is take responsibility. It's very easy to say, well, this was the horrific thing that the Catholic Church did, and it happened hundreds of years ago, and this doesn't exist now. But I tell you, I had one caller while it was rolling telling me that he sells instruments of torture to the government, and he was a nice guy, you know, and I said, well, are you happy about this? And he said, no, but it's a way to make a living. And I was a little bit dreading him calling back because, you know, the point that I'm trying to get to is how we can... Somebody, by the way, said that I was totally bamboozled, that no such thing happened, he was just kidding me, but I don't know. I don't think he was kidding me, and I do think torture goes on, and I do think they have instruments, and I do think there's a market, and the government is a good market if people need money, and in this day and age, with jobs being so limited, people will make money the way they can. He did sound like a nice guy, and I regret he didn't call back. All come together and not have my religion right at the expense of your religion wrong and your different belief systems wrong.
Well, I believe you're right in one case where life is what you make it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's an essence of everything. That's like a essence of what you're, you know, trying to talk about. You know what I mean? It's what you make it. You know what I mean? And the guy said he doesn't like selling this equipment to the people, but it's a living.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Thank you for calling.
Sure, miss.
Bye.
Bye.
We have another caller. Oh, we had another. Oh, let's try this. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes. Can you hear me? What do you think of this material?
Yes, I think it's very fascinating.
Right. You're not the one selling instruments of torture to the government, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Because I probably would never do that.
No,
I think they have enough already.
I know, but he was a really nice guy. That's why I was kind of dreading him calling back, because I didn't want to, like dwell on this, but I think it's an important thing to understand that we're all kind of interconnected in the economy.
Right.
We may not directly be involved with selling instruments of torture, but I think if you look at how money market funds are going and the implications of stock transactions, it leads to that.
Right.
So anyway, what were you wanting to call about?
Well, yeah, just a couple of points. The first point I heard someone mention the Quran.
Right.
A lot of people, I don't know whether they know this or not, but the Quran was basically taken from the Bible. It was written about 600, maybe 800 years after the Bible was written. The second thing I wanted to say is that when Moses came down from the mountain, he didn't bring us religion. He brought us laws, statutes, and commandments. And when you read the Bible, that's all Christ told you to do. He didn't tell you to get involved in any religious organizations. It's not about religions at all. The word religion comes from the word religlio, which means to suppress and to hold down and restrain. And that's basically what religions do. So all of us who are involved in religions are going in the wrong direction. All we have to do is learn to keep God's laws, statutes, and commandments, which are in the Bible, and that will take us into the next level.
Now, that's nice. And I thought what the fellow said before, he
he's way off. He's into Islam, he's a Muslim, he's into a religion, and I mean, some people, they're partially right and then they're mostly wrong. The bottom line is if you're caught in any religion, you're on the left-hand side, because Christ didn't deal with religions, not at all.
What's your personal feeling about Jesus? What's your...
Christ is the Savior. I believe that Christ will come back. I love Christ. Christ died for me. He died for you. I believe that he's going to make a return. He's going to straighten this whole mess out down here, because, in all honesty, if he doesn't return, we're all doomed.
How are you feeling right now in this moment?
Well, right now I feel very good about your show. I think it's very informative.
So even though...
You always, you have such a pleasant voice.
You know, this is really interesting because when he was going on and on about Jesus, I thought, oh my God, you know, he's going to think I'm a bad person, I'm anti-Christian and all that. And I was using my principles of nonviolent communication to ask him how he was feeling. I couldn't believe it. He threw me a compliment. Well, thank you.
You know, you could, I mean, really, you could sing me a lullaby. I'll fall out in a minute.
Thank you so much, because, you know, a lot of people who are saying, you know, they have a very passionate interpretation of Jesus as you do, and I respect passion in any shape or form. Sometimes they don't want to kind of expand the thinking process, so it's nice that you want to stay in dialogue on this, not say that you have the absolute definite only way, that even though he does seem to be kind of saying that, but you know, but like I say, he's staying in dialogue. So I think that's what I just love about public access. We can all connect different viewpoints. If Jesus is coming, you know, this is something very vast, because what is the nature of time? What is the nature of the future? What the quantum mechanics scientists are saying, that there's no reason, looking at it from the point of view scientifically, that we should not have access to the future as we do to the past. And yet those who have access to the future are considered those who hold the gifts of the Spirit.
See, what
That's
I do
what
is I
St.
like
Paul was
I like
talking
to
about.
keep it as simple as possible for the viewers especially. Let's look at it this way. The world is a stage, and God is totally in control. We're like actors on this stage.
Yeah.
And right now we're all playing out our parts. If you read the Bible, all of the prophecies are falling right into place. Even a guy, the village idiot like George Bush, who is doing what he's doing, he's just following the script, and he's pushing everything right into prophecy. And basically, well, let me just finish. Everything that's going on right now is falling right into the hands of what God wants to happen. And believe me, it's all going to come to a climax, and it will end soon.
Thank you so much, caller.
Thank you.
Bye. And we have another caller here. Hello? Hello?
Paula.
Yeah. So here we are, and farther down the rabbit hole. We kind of got something for everybody. Now here comes Alan Steinfeld, and you can see he has a little problem with the guy's energy.
Hi, Alan.
Hey, did you hear all the
what's
calls?
funny about that guy? He thinks everyone else has the problem. You know, he doesn't see how his beliefs are also influenced by religion.
Well, of course, I happen to be a little partial because he liked my voice.
No, but
the thing is, Alan, I think
that's the joke. Everyone calls everyone else a blasphemer except themselves. They believe that theirs is the truth.
but isn't it nice that we can just stay in dialogue? Because when he was saying Jesus has got the only way, I have to admit, I kind of felt a little crunched down. I thought, oh no, you know, someone's going to think that, you know, I'm not going to be saved, or I'm leading viewers astray or whatever. But he doesn't seem to like George Bush. He had a strong label for him.
Well, you know, it's obvious. Anyone.
But a lot of fundamentalists
doesn't like George Bush, but you know, people don't see their own fanaticism.
No, but the thing is, Alan, I think Esther Kaplan, because Joe Friendly was talking about her having kind of infiltrated a lot of the fundamentalist organizations, were saying that the reason Bush won was he had this righteous vote that people.
He had the what?
He had the vote of righteousness that, of course, now I don't know if he had the vote of the righteous because of the voting being so rigged, but anyway, people felt somehow they were on God's side, or George Bush is on God's side, and I think all of this is sort of complex, how we've been programmed.
But
and I wanted to show
being on God's side, righteousness. I mean, he's anything but righteous, George Bush.
But see,
you know,
now
the
Inquisition, those things that I showed, those horrific etchings, what went along with it was an explanation, was that if you didn't participate, if you were in the village, and on Tuesday at 10 o'clock, which was apparently the time when they would burn the witches, because 85% of the victims of the Inquisition were women, and if you weren't there, and if you didn't buy some of the... Hello? Hello?